He was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He was the challenger that only wanted a shot at the title.
When you speak about Hasim Rahman, you know, you could say he got unlucky against David Tua. And I'm giving him another opportunity to prove himself.
I feel like this is the biggest opportunity of my life. I believe I'm going to be very prepared for this opportunity, and I will be the next heavyweight champion in the world.
They say rocks are hard to crumble, but this rock's definitely going to be broken. Well, I'm going to take out Hasim Rahman. You're getting knocked out. Getting knocked out.
But Hasim Rahman had other plans. Now Rahman has the belts. Lewis wants them back. The stage is set for the rematch. Rahman and Lewis too.
It was one of the biggest upsets in boxing history.
Brand new heavyweight champion, and he's from the United States.
I'll be back again.
Can Lewis take back his crown?
No way, I've seen him beat me twice.
Or is Rahman the new king?
Let's do it again! Let's do it again!
Rahman Lewis 2, November 17th from Mandalay Bay, live on pay-per-view. Contact your pay-per-view provider to order.
Nobody takes my crown.
I am champion of the world.
Nobody.
Last April, the world heavyweight title changed hands when Hasim the Rock Rahman landed a thunderous right hand that sent Lennox Lewis to the canvas. Did Rahman fight the fight of his life, or was Lewis simply unprepared?
Although the first fight, I think we saw a very prepared Rahman going against unprepared Lennox Lewis, who didn't take his opponent seriously enough, didn't train hard enough, and then when the fight got more difficult than he expected, he couldn't adjust.
He just thought that he was going to go in and basically do what he had been doing in his recent fights, which was just winning easily. What he didn't realize was that Hasim Rahman was everything the opposite of what Lewis was, and that was very, very focused, very, very ready for the fight, and very, very prepared mentally to take the challenge.
I do think Lewis took Rahman lightly the first time. He saw a fighter who had been knocked out a couple of times. He saw a fighter probably who he thought, why is this guy even getting a shot?
And there wasn't anything in the body of work leading up to this from Hasim Rahman that would give you any indication that he would come in with any kind of strategy to neutralize any of the skills that Lennox Lewis had.
There were rumors before the fight that Lewis hadn't trained hard, you know, hadn't gotten himself acclimated to the altitude, and you could sort of sense that that was probably the case once they got into the fight. It looked like Rahman was getting stronger, it looked like Lewis was getting a little weaker, and it certainly looked like Rahman was figuring out a way to get through Lewis's defense.
Maybe there was a little mental lapse in the fight. I agree with that, but as far as physically prepared, I was definitely physically prepared, because I've always said to people, you know, what does one punch have to do with if I'm in shape or not? I was in great shape.
Because of Lewis's devastating power, Rahman knew that if he wanted to have a chance against the heavyweight champion, he needed to neutralize Lewis's big weapon of choice, his right hand.
Hasim Rahman, in preparing for Lennox Lewis, prepared mainly for one thing, and that was to avoid Lennox Lewis's famed and reputed big right hand. And every time that Lennox would get in a position to throw it, Rahman had a tendency to bend underneath to avoid being hit with the right hand. And I thought he did a very good job of that.
To me, it was very important in the Lennox Lewis fight for me to win the first round, for me to get a measure of respect in the first round. And from that point, I just felt like I was getting to him mentally as well as physically from that point on.
It's a situation where I gave him an inch, he took a yard. He threw a great punch in South Africa, and he was able to come through it, get through with it. I put up my hand to block it, and the punch just slipped inside, and it was a great punch.
The punch that ended Lewis's reign was a point of contention. While some attributed to Rahman's preparation, others debated whether or not luck was involved.
I'm surprised that people say it was a lucky punch, because I don't see where Lennox was dominating the fight at any point.
I don't believe that there's such a thing as a lucky punch. If you land a punch that is timed well enough and is thrown hard enough with enough leverage to knock a heavyweight out, it's not lucky.
But there was no luck involved. It's a bad luck. But what the public needs to know, if they don't already, is that lucky or not, if you hit him in the chin He goes down and he does not get up. But you can't take anything away from the punch, whether it was a lucky punch or whether Rahman planned the punch, it ended the fight. The heavyweight championship of the world changed hands on one punch.
Lucky or not, one thing is certain. When Rahman and Lewis meet again for the much-anticipated rematch, neither one is leaving anything to chance.
I want to be known as the one and only champion. I want to be done with Lennox Lewis.
It was one of the biggest upsets in boxing history.
Brand new heavyweight champion, and he's from the United States.
I'll be back again.
Can Lewis take back his crown?
No way, I'll think he'll beat me twice.
Or is Rahman the new king?
Let's do it again! Let's do it again!
Rahman Lewis 2, November 17th from Mandalay Bay, live on pay-per-view. Contact your pay-per-view provider to order.
Nobody takes my crown.
I am the champion of the world.
Nobody.
It's been a long, hard road to the heavyweight championship for Hasim Rahman. From the beginning, he has relied on a simple creed of hard work, discipline, and a strong commitment to his faith.
All of this stuff, it gives me, inner strength to let me know that there's nothing I can't do. And I feel like, everything else is really simple.
Even before Hasim Rahman discovered boxing, he knew he would achieve greatness.
I definitely feel like, it was my destiny to become heavyweight champion because the sheer fact that I wasn't in boxing and I got called towards this boxing thing and really rose to the top of the game in rapid fashion.
At 20, almost on a whim, Rahman walked into the Mac Lewis gym in his hometown of Baltimore. He was instantly recognized for his potential in the ring.
And when I went to the gym, I just fell in love with him. I said, well, I just believed in Mr. Mac. Said, well, if you work hard, you can be heavyweight champion of the world. So I believed in him, and I just stayed in the gym from that point on.
Desperately looking for a way to support his growing family, Rahman began training in earnest and developed his boxing skills. After only 2 years, he began a run of 29 straight victories that demanded the attention of the boxing world.
Rahman is not a pushover. He has solid punch, and he's, a good boxer. He's a little quicker than people give him credit for with his feet.
He's primarily a boxer who relies on his jab. Busy fighter, throws more punches than the average heavyweight per round, and also has this big equalizer in the right hand.
As a professional for only 7 years, Rahman now has an impressive record of 35 wins, 29 by knockout. But as a latecomer to boxing, Rahman also traded power for power in his 2 knockout losses.
One of the toughest guys that he had fought had been David Tua, and he was easily winning that fight, and he got caught with an unfair punch that was after the bell by David Tua, and then in the next round, Tua finished him off.
And Niskaev, who has a tremendous right hand, just landed a perfect shot right on his chin, which probably would have knocked out anybody, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, any of the top heavyweights.
After the devastating loss to Niskaev, Rahman summoned the courage to rededicate himself to boxing and the quest for a world title.
And this is what the dream is for every fighter that steps in them ropes. And every fighter that steps in the ropes is courageous by the mere fact of walking them steps and getting in that ring.
He fought a very good fight on HBO with Corey Sanders in Atlantic City. That was a tremendous battle, and he was hurt in that fight a little bit and knocked down, but again, he came back, he rallied, and he knocked him out in very impressive fashion.
With the unexpected victory over Lennox Lewis, the new world champion stepped into the spotlight. Many offers were thrown at him, but he wasn't enticed and decided to remain a free agent.
I was very impressed with how he handled himself after winning the title. Here he was with every promoter and every television network throwing literally $20, $30 million at him, and he remained very composed, and I thought he remained very dignified.
By Rahman not signing a contract with any network, he controls his own destiny. In other words, as long as he continues to win, people will have to come to him for fights because he's the champ.
I want to be known as the one and only champion. I want to be done with Lennox Lewis. And once I finish with him, I feel like I can go to anywhere I want and make the kind of deal I want.
It's one of the biggest and best gambles, and it's a beautiful gamble when you think about it. And it takes a lot more courage to do what he's doing in regards to his being a boxing free agent, I think, than it does to step into the ring against Lennox Lewis.
With Hasim Rahman's victory, he brought the heavyweight title back to America. the same title held by the great American champion.
United States sports fans always want, generally speaking, the heavyweight champion to be an American. The public would love to embrace an American fighter who's the heavyweight champion of the world.
Hasim has done a great job. The fans love him. The media loves him. He's got a great attitude. He carries himself like the champion that he is.
Rahman considers himself the people's champion and doesn't forget his humble roots or the importance of family.
When I'm feeling down in camp or whatever, I can call my daughter and she can say a few words and lift my spirits. Or my son, he can say a few words and lift my spirits. I got 2 boys, and even just something simple, they can just tell me they love me, and that'll just make me train harder.
Right now, Hasim Rahman is determined to hold on to the title and his place in boxing history. To prepare for the fight, Rahman is working with his trainer of 2 years, Adrian Davis.
Anything can happen. That's why we prepare. To take a punch, to give a punch, to fight injured. We train all kind of ways. We train all kind of ways. And that's why Hasim Rahman is successful, because he does whatever it takes to win. If he thinks it's right and it's going to help him, he'll do it.
People tell me that Lennox Lewis is going to come in better shape this time. But Hasim Rahman is going to come in better shape this time. I'm already stronger than I was when I fought him, and my conditioning is going to be better. So while everybody's anticipating this new and improved Lennox Lewis, it's going to be a new and improved Hasim Rahman.
The circumstances surrounding the happenings after the fight were among the most bizarre we've ever seen in the history of the sport.
It was one of the biggest upsets in boxing history.
A brand new heavyweight champion, and he's from the United States.
I'll be back again.
Can Lewis take back his crown?
No way, I'll think he'll beat me twice.
Or is Rahman the new king?
Let's do it again! Let's do it again!
Rahman Lewis 2, November 17th from Mandalay Bay, live on pay-per-view. Contact your pay-per-view provider to order.
Nobody takes my crown.
I'm champion of the world.
Nobody.
As soon as Rahman knocked out Lewis, an immediate rematch seemed inevitable. Except the newly crowned champion wanted to first test his power in a high-paying interim fight.
Hey, I'll fight Tyson. We can break Tyson right here.
Lennox Lewis sensed that the title and his belt could slip away, and he demanded that Rahman face him first. And for the next 4 months, the only battles fought were in the courtroom or the boardroom.
But all the lawsuits were about power and about money. And whoever controls the heavyweight champion controls boxing.
The circumstances surrounding the happenings after the fight were among the most bizarre we've ever seen in the history of the sport.
A judge upheld Lewis's claim for a rematch. Finally, the terms were set for Rahman Lewis 2 at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Let the showdown begin.
I think the legal battles that's been going on in the courtroom has got everyone worked up emotionally and spiritually to the point where I see this fight boiling over to be a highly charged emotional fight.
Lennox Lewis is the odd maker's favorite, but there are questions about Lewis's age, the chins of both fighters, and mental acuity that may level the playing field.
Lewis was a little slow, a little tentative in South Africa. Now you have to ask, what was the reason for that? Was it because he wasn't in shape and the fight was in an odd hour and he hadn't prepared properly and the altitude, he was breathing heavily? Or that is also a telltale sign of an aging fighter.
I still feel young, and I feel the fact of my age is the fact that's given me a lot of experience. You could say I'm a seasoned professional. I don't believe that those belts belong to him and that he can keep those belts for too long.
Despite the fact that both Rahman and Lewis have 29 knockouts apiece, both have been knocked out twice.
The fact that their chins might not hold up under all the pressure and all the firepower is actually good for boxing fans, because you know that both guys have tremendous power. They can knock out the other guy with one shot, and you also can see by past history that they have the ability to be knocked out with one shot.
The difference, perhaps, is that Lewis was knocked out by Rahman and must face him again in this rematch.
There are psychological ramifications with being knocked out. He could come in a little bit gun-shy. It's going to be, that's why any rematch of this sort is so interesting, because you know that the loser is going to be mentally tougher, but what physical toll and what psychological toll did that first fight take?
I'm definitely not going to be hesitant. I'm stepping in the ring to get my championships back. I'm going to do everything in my power, use all my talent to win the fight. Even try and knock Rahman out. He knocked me out the first fight, I'm going to knock him out the second fight.
Can Lewis fulfill his promise and take out Rahman? Or will Rahman predominate and muscle his way to victory? What does each fighter have to do to claim the championship?
Well, for Rahman to win the fight, the most important thing for him is to remember what got him to win the first time, and that is to make sure that he prepares in the same fashion, with the same intensity, the same focus, and does the same things. He can't say, oh, well, I did it the first time, the second time will be no problem. He needs to prepare himself as well, if not better, for the rematch.
The worst thing he can do, which will cost him terribly, is if he goes in there looking for a one-punch knockout. So he has to remember what he does best, which is jab. He has to feel Lewis out in the first 2 rounds to see if there are psychological damage that's carried over from the first fight. But if Lewis is in control and seems to be technically sound and doesn't seem to be scared of getting knocked out again, then Rahman has to box, use his jab, look for the openings, do not look for one punch.
But Lennox likes it. Now, this is a guy who knocked him out. So that's a test. Can you beat a guy who knocked you out? And psychologically, no matter what Lennox says, there's a piece of that in his mind. He'll have to overcome that to win. And if he's a true champion, he'll do it.
So you got an exciting provocation here because each fighter wants to cover the award of heavyweight championship. Can't but one have it. So you have an irresistible force against an immovable object, and something has got to give.
You know, I consider myself a world champion. That means a champion of every country, and I represent the world.
It was one of the biggest upsets in boxing history.
A brand new heavyweight champion, and he's from the United States.
I'll be back again.
Can Lewis take back his crown?
No way, I'll think he'll beat me twice.
Or is Rahman the new king?
Let's do it again! Let's do it again!
Rahman Lewis 2, November 17th from Mandalay Bay, live on pay-per-view. Contact your pay-per-view provider to order.
Nobody takes my crown.
I am champion of the world.
Nobody.
Over 4 years ago, Lennox Lewis reclaimed his heavyweight title from Oliver McCall and went on to defend it 9 times. To Lennox Lewis, being the world champion is serious business.
It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of effort to become champion, for one thing. Then it takes even more effort and more determination to stay champion.
In his heart, Lennox Lewis still believes he is the heavyweight champion and that Hasim Rahman doesn't deserve to hold the belts.
I don't believe that Rahman is a true champion. I believe that he's a one-punch wonder, and I don't believe that he represents the heavyweight belts the way how it should be represented. And I believe that I'm a better man, and I should be there. I believe that I'm a better boxer than him. This is why it's important to me, and this is why I'm going to be heavyweight champion of the world once again.
Regaining the world championship is important to Lennox Lewis because he considers himself a citizen of the world. He was born in England to a Jamaican mother, won Olympic gold for Canada, and has traveled the world extensively during his 24-year boxing career.
Now, I consider myself a world champion. That means a champion of every country, and I represent the world.
I think a lot of the public, not only just Americans, have had some trouble warming up to Lennox. And whether he be American or not, just because of his personality, he certainly hasn't been a heavyweight who's been universally embraced by the public.
A lot of people say that he's arrogant, he's aloof. He's really basically a very, very nice person with a great sense of humor. And I would say that Lennox is shy.
Lennox is Lennox. Sometimes it's hard to knock a guy for being himself. I mean, that's who he is. That's how he's always acted. That's how he'll act when he's away from the game.
While Lewis doesn't concern himself with his reputation outside the ring, he cares very much how he is perceived in the ring.
This fight against Rahman means everything to Lennox Lewis. It's not about money. It's about pride.
Lennox Lewis has been to the top. Now he's trying to climb back up. Does he really have the desire to pay the price the way he did the first time? I think it's clear at this stage of his career, he's thinking about the end. He wants to walk out as a champion.
So it's a very crucial situation in this fight that he almost has to win the fight, not just for the fight itself, but for respectability and to have an honorable spot in the history of boxing and to be remembered as a great champion.
Our slogan for this fight is back to basics. Back to Pennsylvania, where Lennox has always trained, climbing the hills there, early morning runs, a whole different mindset and a tenacity to this fight that maybe was lacking somewhat in the fight in South Africa.
This is right now, it's the early stages of my training. So right now we're just trying to build up some strength and some conditioning and making sure that we don't get in shape too early. You know, Manny's really concerned about me overtraining because I'm so excited about getting into training because I want to go after Hasim Rahman and get my belts back.
For over 7 years, Lewis has trusted the guidance of Emmanuel Stewart, the renowned trainer to 27 world champions.
Lennox is a very unusual person in a lot of ways. He puts so much value in loyalty, more so than any boxer that I've ever dealt with. And he's very loyal himself. And the fact that he's got the same team with him after losing a fight shows his loyalty.
I've got a great team. They're the ones, without them I wouldn't be who I am today. And they've helped me achieve what I've achieved today. And, you know, I find if you're good with people, they'll treat you good back, and I think that's really important. You know, I get all that from my mother and the way she raised me, so that really helps me as a person.
Lennox's mother is everybody's mother. We love her. It's our mom. And she's like the star of the camp.
With his team behind him, the former champion only wants one thing: to regain the heavyweight crown.
Yeah, I'm very focused because I said, you know, if I lose this fight, I'm going to retire. And I think I'm still young to retire yet, and I don't feel that Hasim Rahman can beat me in the second fight.
When the bell rings, we leave Lennox Lewis, and he's out there by himself. I don't care how much we love him and how great a time we may spend training him and teaching him.
And I love the fact that, you know, it really depends on you whether you lose or win. You know, what you put into it is what you get out of it.
It was one of the biggest upsets in boxing history.
Brand new heavyweight champion, and he's from the United States.
I'll be back again.
Can Lewis take back his crown?
No way I'll see him beat me twice.
Or is Rahman the new king?
Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
Rahman Lewis 2, November 17th from Mandalay Bay, live on pay-per-view. Contact your pay-per-view provider to order.
Nobody takes my crown.
I am the champion of the world.
Nobody.
2 months ago, the fighters and their teams went on a publicity and media tour across the United States with a final stop in London, England. Making light of the arduous legal negotiations for the rematch, a mock trial was presented in each city with Don King presiding.
This is a courtroom of heavyweight boxing.
For excitement, local flavor was added to each event. Showgirls in Vegas, revolutionary soldiers in New York, and pomp and circumstance in London. But for all the window dressing and silly antics, the real fireworks came from the fighters themselves.
Yeah, he was trying to run away. Yeah, the Rock was trying to run away. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
He seems to think that he's going to knock me out. He keeps telling everybody he's going to knock me out. He's living on what he's done, which is he had a brilliant career, Hall of Fame career. But it's just over now, Lennox.
I'm going to show him that he's just holding on to my belt. I'm going to show him that he doesn't even belong in the ring with me.
We decided to give him a belt. So we're going to present you the belt. So when your pants get too big, that's the only belt that he will be getting from Baltimore.
Making numerous television and radio appearances together, the fighters were spending a lot of time in dangerously close proximity.
Threw a great punch, a terrific punch.
A lucky punch.
Unbelievable punch. One that came out of the heavens. And it even surprised Rahman himself. He said it after the fight.
What did I say?
When heavyweights throw punches, things can happen just like that. And that's what happened in my fight. I dare you to do that again. In fact, if you're big like that, put some money where your mouth is, son. Put $1 million right now.
You do not own anything, including the belt.
Come in with your own
including
stuff,
the
man.
belt.
For the moment.
And leave
Remember
it.
that. For the moment.
You ain't taking nothing from me.
All right.
Not. You know, the only thing you taking is butt whipping.
As the animosity continued to escalate, It was only a matter of time before an eruption would occur at tremendous risk to the fighters and their wallets. Even after the dust settled on the television set, the hostility between Rahman and Lewis continued to grow.
I'm taking this fight serious. I take everything serious. Yeah, you're in trouble, son. We won't waste no punches now. Let him pay for it. You're gonna see a different Lennox Lewis.
Come to him, champ.
For real.
He's a little sour, he's a little salty, but we understand because yesterday I did have him on the ground. He was kicking like a woman, but because this is it for you, man. It's over. You want to do it now? You want to do it now? You want to do it now? Well, look at it, look at it. At first he didn't say it. He just got up here and said, let's do it for the money. Let's get paid. I'm the champ. Let's get on the champ no more.
Both fighters endured the press tour, but only one will prevail when they meet in the ring at Mandalay Bay.
It was one of the biggest upsets in history. A victory that stunned the boxing world. No one expected Lewis to lose until Rahman sent him down with a right.
Brand new heavyweight champion. And he's from the United States.
I'll be back again.
Can Lewis take back the crown?
No way, I've seen him beat me twice.
Or is Rahman the new king?
Let's do it again! Let's do it again!
Rahman Lewis 2. Saturday, November 17th from Mandalay Bay. Live on pay-per-view. Will it be repeat or revenge? Don't miss the showdown for the heavyweight championship of the world. Contact your pay-per-view provider to order Rahman Lewis 2.
I am champion of the world. Nobody takes my crown. Nobody.
Does Hasim Rahman have the skills and tenacity to show he is the legitimate world heavyweight champion?
To me, it's just about winning this fight and just keep on doing what I do. I don't feel like I'm ever going to get the respect I deserve.
Can Lennox Lewis avenge his loss and prove that he is one of the all-time great heavyweights?
So I'm looking towards a future where I go regain the championship of the world and get my belts back.
Who will be the first great heavyweight of the new millennium?
I can't see Lennox taking this fight lightly like he did the first one. I can't see Rahman letting the success he had spoil him.
Was it really true what he did the first time, or was it just a fluke, as Lennox has suggested?
You know, I call Hasim Rahman the one-punch wonder. And, you know, that's what I believe he is.
And that's what this second fight is all about. Now we're going to find out. Was it a lucky punch, so to speak, or not?
If Hasim Rahman decides that he is going to do the same thing that he did to Lennox Lewis before, it could be a very short fight. It could be a very electrifying fight.
Hasim Rahman's betting on himself that he can do it again. And I'm betting he can do it again.
I would pick Lewis because I still feel he's the better boxer. I feel that if both fighters fight their best, Lewis will win.
This is what makes boxing so great. It's so unpredictable. No one can really know what the destiny will be until you see it evolve right before your eyes.
Both fighters have a lot of motivation, and I think the chance of it being a very good fight are good.
It's going to be a great fight, and I believe that Rahman's going to be surprised in the second fight.
But I can tell you, I'm coming in there for war. I don't know what the other guy's coming in there for, and if he's coming in there for what I'm coming in there for, y'all gonna see a blockbuster.